Welcome to the Hero's Blueprint. I am your host, Joe De-Paola, and I am here today bringing you guys a brand new episode. And today we're going to be diving into some different mindset shifts and different tools that we can use to transform our lives today. So, what do I mean by that? Well, in this episode, we're going to be diving into 3 specific different things that each one individually has the power to completely transform how you go throughout your day today. From the second you listen to this, if you implement any one of these 3 things, you will notice a drastic change in not only your quality of life today, but also in the direction your life can go from here on forward. So before we dive into this, I want to touch upon something. If you are listening right now, audio-wise on Spotify or on Apple Podcasts or pretty much everywhere, they all include the links. If you go down into the show notes, you'll notice that I have a free guide about personal branding and why do people need one, especially small business owners. And if that's something that interests you, if you want to know how you can stand out in your industry, dominate and get more clients, and just be the go-to person for whatever it is that you do in your sector, download that free guide and I'll get you started on some tangible ways that you can start creating a personal brand today and truly start standing out. So with that being said, one thing I'm trying to work on is talking slower. So actively, that's a goal for me in this episode right here. So I need you guys to let me know in the messages, shoot me a message, be like, hey, I noticed you were talking slower this episode, or hey, you failed your goal of talking slower. Like, I still miss stuff. All right. So I just wanted to be completely transparent, vulnerable, and authentic with all of you lovely people, because we are all on this journey together. And I am not a perfect person, and I have a lot of things I am working on. And the best way to work on something is to actively do it instead of thinking about it. So let's dive in. The first thing that we're going to be talking about is communication. So one thing I have learned about in Toastmasters, which if you're not familiar with what Toastmasters is, it's basically a place that you can go that will teach you how to public speak. In the most generic form possible, that's what Toastmasters is. So in Toastmasters, one thing that I've learned over the past 2 years of being a member is that I had a really bad problem of when I was hearing people talk, when I was hearing people give speeches, impromptu speeches, whatever it was, I wasn't truly listening. And what I mean by that is I was hearing people talk, but I noticed in my head, I was waiting to hear something. And as soon as I heard something I wanted to hear, then I would be waiting to respond. I wouldn't be listening to everything they were saying, if that makes sense. Instead of listening, I was just waiting to respond. And I've noticed that in my personal life, I do that a lot too. And this is something I've been working on for a while now. So I catch myself all the time. Like, for example, if I hear a friend talking about work and how maybe work isn't going so good for them and they're thinking about quitting or finding a new job, usually how I would react in that situation is once they would say something like that is I would automatically start trying to hand out solutions, give help, offer feedback, or just respond with however I can help. But you know what that's doing? Is that's not me listening. If I'm talking, I'm not listening. So instead of trying to help people and just instantly respond with the first things on my head, what I'll do now is I'll just sit there and listen to everything they have to say, and I'll say, that must be really tough. I hear you. Like, that sounds like a really tough situation you're in. Or I know it can be really stressful looking for a new job. I'm sorry you're going through this. And do you know how drastic of a change that has made in my life, in my personal life and professional life? I mean, the fact that the first thoughts that come up to my head now are 0 thoughts. And instead, it's literally just me being present with that person is so noticeable from who I was 3 years ago to now that I just wish that every single person on this planet truly would sit and listen and bite their tongue and just hear. Just literally allow yourself to be present with a person and don't try and be a fixer. Don't try and be a solution expert. Now, it's different if somebody comes to you asking for true help, if they ask for solutions, but there's such a big difference between listening and just waiting to respond. And I encourage you, the next person you talk to, be conscious of this. Like, genuinely, whoever it is that you're talking to, throughout the rest of this day after you hear this, ask yourself, like, are you listening to what they're saying, or are you just waiting to respond? Are you just waiting for them to say something so you can respond and add on to the conversation? And you'll notice throughout your day how many moments are going to come up where you're like, oh my gosh, I'm not even listening to this person. Like, I heard half of what they said, and then they said something like, and then I thought of something in my head that I wanted to say, and I've just been waiting to say that. You're not really listening. You're just literally waiting to respond. So please put this in practice today. I'm going to say it one more time, all right? Listen instead of waiting to respond. Put this into practice today, please. I beg of you. I beg of you. I beg of you, because it has transformed my life. Now, the second thing we're going to be diving into, and this is something that I truly want you to acknowledge, and this is something you might have to take some time, like 15 to 20 minutes out of your day, whether it be today, tomorrow, next day, and sit with. And that is, take pride in your work. And that means whatever the heck you do, from being a janitor to a doctor to a cook to a car wash attendant to a forklift driver. Take pride in whatever work that you do. Let me tell you a story real quick. So the other day I was at a event, and everyone around the table was getting to know each other, and everyone was going around saying who they were, what they kind of do, and there was a nurse at the table, and there was a speech pathologist at the table, and then the last person that we were talking with just said, oh, I'm just a forklift driver. Now let me tell you something right here. I hear people say I'm just a blank so often, and I used to do that myself when I was like a pizza driver. When I was delivering pizzas, oh, I'm just a pizza delivery driver, because I was thinking that my work and what I'm doing was so insignificant compared to what other people are doing that I wasn't truly taking pride in what I was doing. I wasn't thinking about the fact that, hey, my work actually is making a difference. So this guy who said, I'm just a forklift driver, the first thing that came to my head when he said that is I was thinking about how many injuries is he preventing because he's driving a forklift? How many workplace accidents is he preventing because people aren't having to pick all that stuff up? How many people are getting their stuff in a week rather than a month because he is a forklift driver? How many people are getting their medicine quicker because everything is getting delivered at such a quicker speed than if it was just people handheld walking stuff? Whether you're a forklift driver or a janitor, in a janitor sense, imagine if there was no janitors, how dirty places would be, how much bacteria, how much illness, how much disgust, how gross places would be. Like, every single person in every single job, from a person flipping burgers to delivering forklifts, to being a forklift driver, to delivering pizzas, to being a doctor, every single person helps make this earth go round. And every single job improves the quality of life for absolutely everybody. And that's something that we don't even think about a lot of the time, is a lot of times we'll just go into work, clock in, and just clock out and just be like, okay, whatever. That was a day of work. Take pride in whatever work that you're doing. And what I said at the beginning of this is you might have to take some time with this. I truly, genuinely want you to feel like what you're doing is making a difference, and you might have to get deep and think about it. If you were a janitor, like, genuinely think about how many people are you saving from illnesses? How many people are you saving from allergies? How many people are you saving from mildew, mold? Like, just think about all of the things that you're preventing from harming other people by being a janitor, by being a forklift driver, by being a doctor, by flipping burgers. Imagine how many people are going to work and they legitimately are so hungry and they don't have any time to cook. And the only food that they're going to have throughout the day is literally the food that you're flipping at a fast food restaurant. Like, take a second, think about just how much of an impact you are truly making on people's lives. All right? And I genuinely mean that, because it is I used to do it, and I hate when people say I'm just, because you are literally a member of society that is making the world go round. I don't care what it is that you do. Every single job deserves the same amount of respect, which is maximum amount of respect. And take pride in that. Please take pride in that. And the last thing that I want to talk about is a very deep one, all right? I'm just warning you, this is literally so deep. So throughout each day, we have about 60 to 70,000 thoughts. That's a lot of thoughts. But you want to know something even crazier? 90% of the thoughts that we think in a day are the same thoughts that we had the day before. Let me say that again. We have 60 to 70,000 thoughts a day. And 90% of the thoughts we have in a day are the same thoughts as the day before. So imagine you are in a really bad headspace, or you're not in the spot that you want to be in life. Could you see how difficult it is to get out of that situation knowing that 90% of the thoughts that you're having today are probably going to be the same as yesterday? And if yesterday's thoughts weren't positive, if they were negative, they're most likely going to be negative today. So the reason why I tell you this is because knowing that information is so crucial in understanding how we can actually transform how we think, how we can actually introduce new thoughts, how we can actually really make drastic change in a short amount of time. So the way that we actually think is, let's say you're in a bad spot and your mental thoughts are just coming in all negative throughout the day. Oh man, I'm not making enough money. I'm depressed. I'm anxious. And you are trying to do some things to change it, whether it be listening to a podcast like this, or reading a book, or watching a seminar online, or a course, whatever. We all try doing stuff to get us out of situations. But here's a crazy thing, is that because our brains are so habitual in our thought patterns, if we learn something new and we don't reinforce that by reviewing it that day, or by going further with it and really deeply thinking about it, that spot in our brain, that neural pathway that opens up from that new information is going to wither away literally that day that you learn it. So this is where so many people get stuck, is they'll listen to podcasts, they'll read books, and they'll expect their mindset and their brains to just change. But again, 60 to 70,000 thoughts a day, 90% of the thoughts that we have are the same as the day before. And the way that we learn new information is by acting on that information, whether it be through reviewing that information or by deeply thinking about it. So if you are truly trying to change the way that you think every single day, you need to not only learn something new, but you truly need to write notes on it. You truly need to review that information every day. You truly need to build that bridge that's in your brain, because that 10% of the thoughts that aren't the same as yesterday, if you can do that today with a new piece of information, then guess what? Tomorrow, those thoughts are going to transfer over. And let's say you learn something new tomorrow and you're acting on it, you're reviewing it. Then guess what? Those thoughts are going to transfer over to the next day. So it's not just about listening to new information and introducing new thoughts into our head. It's truly about making sure that the new information that we're learning is actually getting solidified like concrete in our head. I hope that makes sense, because when I heard that from Dr. Joe Dispenza, all credit to him, I mean, that completely changed everything for me, because I listen to podcasts every day, listen to books, scroll social media, listen to positive stuff. And then somehow almost every day I find myself still thinking the same load of crap of, A, you're sick. Oh, you're not good enough. Oh, you can't do this. Money's not coming towards you. Oh, you're not worthy. And when I figured out the reason why is because although I'm doing all this learning, all of that knowledge is withering away in hours, because after a podcast, I'm just expecting my mind to change. I'm not writing the stuff down I learned. So now what I've been doing is every time I'm reading, every time I'm listening to a podcast and I've learned something, I literally will go on my phone and in the notes app, and I'll just type something in that will trigger a memory. Like, hey, I know that I think 60 to 70,000 thoughts a day, 90% of the same thoughts as before. That's something that I can remember off the top of my head because I wrote it down after I heard it. And typically that would be something that I would hear and would just expect myself to remember. But because I've been acting on that information and building off of it, my whole mindset and thought pattern has completely shifted over the past couple days. So I really encourage you, even if it's use any of these three things today, review them, tonight. Review them tomorrow morning, one of them at least, and figure out how you can put into action. And you will start to change the way that you think, and you will start to transform your thoughts, and you will start to transform your entire life. Let me just go through all three of those one more time, because this was a lot of information, and I really encourage you to go back and listen to this and pause after each one, write them down, get clear on exactly what I'm saying, how this applies to you, and what action steps you can take. So the first one was listen instead of waiting to respond. The second one was take pride in your work, whatever you do. And the third one, we have 60 to 70,000 thoughts a day, 90% of the same thoughts from the day before. If you want to truly learn something new and change your thought pattern, you need to act on the information that you learn instantly and review it that same day. So these are three things right here that can completely transform the trajectory of your life. And if you combine all three of them, my God, in 1 week from today, you will notice such a difference. Thank you all for listening. I love each and every one of you who tunes into these episodes, and it completely makes my day hearing how helpful these episodes have been for you. And when you guys leave reviews, especially on Apple and Spotify, like, it helps the show so much, and I read every single one. And genuinely, when I go on my podcast and on days that I feel like not recording and I see those reviews and I see what you guys are saying, it motivates me to truly record and speak from the heart to you and to want to help you. It lights that fire up under me. So if you haven't already, please leave a review for the show. And I just love each and every one of you. And I'm so excited for, the rest of this month in March. It's 2025 and we're just getting started. I have some I know I keep saying it, I have some fantastic guests coming up. And I just cannot wait for you guys to hear these conversations. I am so excited. But I hope you all have a lovely day. Remember, review this information that we went over. Write it down. Don't just listen and go on to the next one. Otherwise, you won't remember it. Take care.